Give me 1 second, man. We're going to remove the Periscope. Let's just keep it there. And let's see here. We're live up here on Facebook. We're live on YouTube. So hope everyone is jumping on. We got an exciting show for you today. We got John West, the John West from Kalamazoo, Michigan. And we're talking about a very, very important topic this morning. John, it's one of the reasons why you came. I know it's one of the things that was a deciding factor when you came to work with me here too. The way that we look at ethics, morals, values, and how important they are just as simply in business.
Absolutely.
So, and what we're doing here this morning is we're bringing in John West, my man John West here, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how those are important to business, and frankly, also too how you can use like arts in business. Okay, this one we got some loop back, so I'm going to kill the loop here real quick. I'm going to be watching for comments. So, guys, hey, we want to invite you if you're jumping onto our stream right now. Give us your comments, give us your input. We're watching both Facebook and the YouTube here. And without further ado, let's go ahead and do our traditional kickoff here. We got Mr. John West coming on here.
Yes.
And what we're looking for, let's do our, let's get our intro going here real quick here. Thanks for jumping on, everyone. All right, as John and I were talking about before we kicked off our intro, we're going to be talking about ethics, morals, values, and the arts and business. How does all that come together? That's a lot, right? But it's a critical component towards bringing business together. And we're going to talk about that with our man, John West here. Let's bring him on. John, how are you doing? Let me mute it over here so I can eliminate the echo back. There we go. There we go. John, how are you doing this morning? Let's get you unmuted there so we get your mic going on.
Awesome. Yes, I'm doing great. Lots of good things happening, things moving forward in business, new goals as we come to the close of the year, still pushing out every day.
Awesome.
And with these new goals, I find that as opposed to pushing, now I'm starting to be gravitated towards my goals. It's
right.
A little bit more effortless as we go into some things, which hopefully for everyone, 2021 can be a little bit more aligned with where you want to go.
That's right. Right. I think if anything, you look at a year like, on our theme topic here that we're talking about, because I think it's an important one in business and 2020, I think, is a real testament to why it's important. Just as simple as that, right?
Yeah.
In 2020, look at the hard decisions businesses had to make, right? And how do they make sense of those things? And very quickly, you can imagine, like, for a lot of small businesses in that moment, big businesses too, they're like, hey, no one's watching. Let me set aside some ethics, right? No one's watching. Let me set aside some morals, just a little bit. No one will ever know. Everybody's doing it, right? It's kind of the mindset that unfortunately some people have.
Yeah.
And really what they're not looking at is, what I think what they're not looking at is they're not looking at how they're going to sabotage their long play game. And how actually, frankly, I mean, they're really, you could sell it, lack of a better way to say it, maybe selling their soul right there at that moment. They're chipping away. If they're going to do that little small thing, what will they do next? But let's tell me about you. I mean, tell us a little bit about who John West is, what you got going on, and all of that.
Yeah. So really where all of this comes from is from a young age. I'd always been passionate about music, entertainment, the arts and culture. But what did that mean for me? I was playing drums. I was playing piano, various music departments for schools and churches and organizations. And I really hit a tough point in my life where I didn't have goals. I didn't have things in a directional way laid out. So I was taking random action to try and achieve my goals. I didn't know who I was or what I believed in. So starting with, understanding all of this, I got to a point where I had strain. I had created so much strain in my family and my friendships. I ended up moving out at the age of 17 in high school. And I had, battles with, mindset, mental, external things, putting things into my system that I shouldn't have, being around just a really, cool group of people, I thought at the time, but a group of people that was not aligned with where I wanted to go, because that's all there was. That's all I knew. That's all I had around me. So it was this almost victim mentality of just accepting my current standards or situations. And it finally got to a point where I had everything out in front of me. I knew kind of what I wanted to do. I knew a little bit of who I was, but I also knew that there was so much more that I could offer, where I had this ability to break down what I was going through and communicate it with people in a way that I wasn't noticing other people doing. And so here I am, 17, living in a communal house, so to speak, with 13 other musicians and entrepreneurs, just not sure where I was going. And so I really created a program where I said, look, I know I can do something. What is bringing me closer to that something? If I know I have the ability to play music, I know I have the ability to communicate, I know I have the ability to do sales, what's going to bring me closer and what's going to bring me farther away? So really all of this comes down to, I was at a place of just my lowest point in life. I had all the stuff in front of me. I didn't know how to do it. I could do it, but I wasn't. Right. What was stopping me?
Right.
That's when I figured out, oh shoot. I had actually an attorney at the time say, what are your goals? It's like, goals? I don't know. My dad was like, hey, you should probably pick here's a sticky note. Write down the top 3 things that are important to you right now. And I was like, oh crap. So, and this is, long story short, I had gone through all this strain in relationships. I'd lived on my own, and it took me years to regain that relationship with my family and my parents, to the point where they even felt comfortable with me to even stay in their own home.
Right. And I think what you're touching on there too is like, some people think that like when they're in that moment, they got to pay this price, right? Or they're like, man, I don't want to do that. So they pay that price, but they don't realize the price they're going to have to pay later. And
yes,
I mean, obviously that was probably kind of at the point where you were at, right? You realized that you had, oh man, the price it took a lot more effort to rebuild that, didn't it?
Yes, definitely.
Sorry,
definitely.
So I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go back, continue. I mean, because this is important. This is like the journey, right? This is what, but if I may, I mean, what I want to add there too is a lot of people think that they have to have that bad journey
it's
to arrive at a good place.
And
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's not that. You don't have to have the bad journey.
That's exactly right.
If you have wisdom, you can find the good journey. You can identify, hey, that's a good journey right there. Where that person is ending up, are they a good, and this is kind of like talking about, I think, some of your values, right? It's definitely. Like if they have that good ethics, the good morality, right? That's the person I want to aim. All right, align with that.
Definitely.
Go ahead. Keep laying it on for us, man.
Yeah, recognizing that, I knew I knew that education was important. I knew that I had to kind of generate some sort of income to keep things rolling. And from that point, and this is before the lowest point in my life, I had gotten some exposure playing shows and DJing, doing music events, still in that group of people. And what was so important to me is no one had ever asked me those questions before. And I think that's an important thing, is you can ask yourself these questions of, what is it that I'm doing? What are my ethics, morals, and values? What does that even mean? And so going into that, I firmly believe that, intentionally setting and viably understanding goals is a huge part of things. So before the goals, understanding who you are, what you're really trying to accomplish, using that as a compass, as your North Star, so you can get through whatever it may be. Because I knew at that time, even though I was struggling, even though my external reality wasn't in a situation that, and it had to do with my mental as well, I knew I still had that ounce of effort, that ounce of commitment, that ounce of a choice left, because I really knew that no one can change me. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't force them to drink. And I had this support system, but I wasn't utilizing it. So it was really making that change. And with this, I won't be able to tell you what your passion is, but I can say that when you learn to view life through a lens, the lens of your ethics and morals, the lens of your values, things become a lot more clear.
Awesome. I love it. Man, that's quite the story of, because what would you say would be like what was like an aha moment in that journey? What was like, you woke up and you realize, what am I doing?
Yeah, honestly, there was a point where I had graduated, and I was just kind of laying around trying to figure out, and it was tough for me to finish that graduating point. There was a lot where I almost didn't make it out, and it was because of the support system that I leaned on, and I just kind of gave up and was like, look, the direction is here, follow the process, blind commitment. So it was at that moment where it was the slow progression, the worthy progression of an ideal for me. I notice there are days I wake up and I'm on it. There are days I wake up and I put good stuff in, and I realize that when I put good stuff in, the days become a lot better. The days get a lot better. So it was that realization of, oh wow, I control my own reality. I can choose what my values are. I can choose what I want to put in. I don't have to watch the news if I don't want to. If I do, I will. It's my choice. Right. Nobody can tell me that. So that's I think was the huge realization.
That's big. And I think that, when a lot of people don't realize that, they feel like they just got to keep like in this vein, and that's their predefined lot in life.
Yeah.
How many times have you heard it? Like somebody says, well, this is what's been laid out for me. You know what I'm saying? Who told you that?
Yeah. Definitely.
So,
Hey, do you mind if I share some of my values with you?
Oh, 100%, man. Let me, yeah, definitely. Let's lay it on us.
Cool. So, I've again always valued arts and culture. I've always valued that side of things that it brings to business. And I think in order to understand those sort of things, a great way to understand would actually be to get the definition here. But before thinking about ethics, Miles Davis says sometimes you have to play for a long time to be able to play like yourself. In music, the game of business, the game of life, whatever you want to think of it as, sometimes you have to play a long time to be able to play like yourself. And with ethics, understanding ethics, moral principles that govern a person's behavior or the conducting of an activity. I always write stuff down. I take notes all the time. So this is definitely worthy. I write this down consistently because it always brings up new information for me. Ethics could also be understood as the branch of knowledge that deals with moral principles. Okay, so there are a set of principles that govern behavior for ethics, a set of principles for conducting an activity, a process. Gary Lou says, this is your world. Shape it or someone else will. So let's talk about morals. Morals defined, also a noun, a lesson, especially one concerning what is right or prudent, that can be derived from a story, a piece of information, or an experience. Can also be a person's standards of behavior or beliefs concerning what is and what is not acceptable for them to do. Okay, hold up. Let's go back here. What's ethics? Moral principles, a set of principles. Okay, so we know that ethics is a set of principles. We know that morals are lessons, they're experiences, they're derived from stories, they're standards. So you have principles, a process, and then you have standards. So then what are values? And this is where it goes into culture points of integration. This is where culture comes into it. Using the arts for business, understanding, taking other people's stories, experiences, life lessons, and incorporating them into your own personal belief system. So the 3 points of integration, Brandon Dawson, a mentor of ours, I love Brandon Dawson. Remember the 3 points of integration: cultural, financial, and operational. Now, I'm no Grant Cardone. And when I started this process, I started it for myself, but I did share this information with a friend of mine who's in her 50s. And I said, here are goals. Here's the difference between goals, dreams, and targets. Here's ethics, morals, and values. And she took that information and was able to double her income. That's a raise of 200% within a day. She called me and was like, hey, by the way, yesterday I doubled my income. It's like, that's the power of setting goals. Like I said, I'm not Brandon Dawson. I'm not Grant Cardone, but it's so powerful.
I had myself muted there. No, you're 100% right. It's like if you don't set those goals, you're never going to hit something.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you're going to have to take that one random shot that the odds are so infinitely small without setting the right goals.
Definitely. And then incorporating all of these 3 things together, when we understand the importance of values. I know Cardone Ventures and Brandon Dawson specifically, they talk about mission, vision, values, the clarity around the mission, the vision, and the values. So this isn't just for business. This isn't just for, relationships or communication with others. This is really, it's that North Star. So values, the regard that something is held to deserve, the importance or worth or usefulness of something, a person's principles, one's own judgment of what is important. So judgment. Person's standards for morals. So you have values as judgment, morals as a set of standards, and ethics as principles. So what I always say with that then is, by aligning with my morals, backed up by my values, I'm living an ethical life.
That's hot, man. That's on fire. I love it. So what would you say, you look at the journey of where you're at now and where you were before, is it worth it?
Oh my gosh. Definitely.
Right.
And it's, you gotta kind of like take these little slices of pie, or it sounds so silly, but take the time to smell the roses. It's like, no, pick a couple of those things, put them in a vase and keep smelling them, get
Right.
closer to where you're trying to go. And it's
Right.
those little slices, those little pieces of pie, those slices of sweet that make it all worth it.
I got a quick question for you. So when you are aligning this stuff for, obviously you're doing these personally, and this is where I think the hallmark of leadership really is actually, you're setting a lot of the values that are there. You're living the ethical life. You're aligning your organization with morals, but it all starts with the individual, the entrepreneur, the owner of that company. So what's like the first step for any owner that's out there that might be looking to expand kind of their empire? What's some of those first steps in order to bring in the right people, and how do they hold those people, accountable to the morals and ethical life? You attract the people that they should keep it going.
We're losing. I don't know if we heard you all the way there, John.
Yeah.
Go ahead, John.
It cut out towards the end there. But where a good starting point, what I would say, is taking inventory, because you don't really know where you're at or what you're doing unless you take that inventory. You take the time to understand, what is it that I've been communicating so far? Is it in the direction of what I believe in, or is it not? And what are the first steps that I can take to minimize the things that aren't progressing me towards this goal? And what can I add into that to keep progressing? So as far as within an organization, I know for me, I've always been very consistent with the vision, as annoying sometimes as it may be to some of my people. I think they're starting to understand, oh, okay, this is what he's about, because it's been consistent from day one. And I would never have been able to be in that position if I first didn't get clear about what I believed in and who I am. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but I think it's starting with personal inventory.
I certainly think it does. It starts with that owner itself. So what's the next step then? Take that a little bit further for how do you hold the people in your organization accountable to that, and how do you align them with, your personal goals and what you believe the organization to be?
Yeah, the thing that I revert back to, since that's not necessarily my wheelhouse, is the Brandon Dawson and Cardone Ventures stuff of aligning your people with personal, professional, and financial goals. When you understand what your ethics, morals, and values are, you delineate what your dreams versus your goals versus the daily targets and actions that you can take personally. And then you start to understand and you have open dialogue through questions, because Brandon says the quality of the questions determines the quality of your answers. Asking questions to people saying, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is, consistency? How important is results to you? In what ways would you be able to embody results? And having that core set of core values, which is what they talk about. And the only reason I bring that up is because I've experienced the benefits of that in my own organization, of coming back from a single Cardone Ventures event and sitting down with people I had around in my organization. We never sat down all together at once. And I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is this to you? If you were in my position and you were looking for someone to fulfill a role of a financial controller, or you were looking to fill a position for an office administrative assistant, what would be the most important things to you? What would you be looking for in a person? And that's how you can start to get the talk track of these people that you're talking with to figure out, do they align with my ethics, morals, and values? But the important thing I think that Cardone Ventures talks about is making sure that your values, your core values are you can hire and fire based off of those, that they're not just woo woo. And that's the tough part. That's been the hardest part for me, is delineating this, woo woo sense of living and being with a algorithmic process of, oh, okay, this value results. We can hire or fire based off of that.
Right. And I think a lot of companies, I'll say it this way too. It's, I just came back this last weekend from the marketing workshop with Grant Cardone. And one of the things that I really picked up is like really having that clear vision statement, mission statement, those core values, what you're talking about right there, all of those kind of come together, and they build like the pillars that the business makes decisions on and how they're going to grow. And, with again, just kind of going back to just like the basic ethics of things and business. There's a lot of big decisions some businesses are making right now that, that they also have to think of how they're going to impact not just their own organization, but other organizations. Because we're, I think in a business environment where we're like this symbiotic relationship.
Yeah.
Of how what we do over here could be affecting this over here. That not only happens on a more micro level inside an organization, but also on a community level or a global economy level, right? Would you agree?
Definitely.
I mean, it's one of the discussions that obviously people are really hot about is like some of the funding that's given out by the government, right? And you see like some of these organizations that have taken this funding and they, number one, did not need it. Now, from a business standpoint, I understand they may take it, right? But now what if they deplete it and it hurts these other organizations that they actually depend on and they didn't even realize it? Mm. So that's a whole nother discussion by itself. But one of the things I want to circle back, like on the moral values that you shared there, a lot of times people, a big voice right now is tolerance, right? How do you think that these moral values that you've touched on, how do you think that fits into tolerance? Ooh. That's a deep one, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, there's a bumper sticker that I saw and it said, no discipline, no coexist. And I thought that was interesting. No discipline, no coexist. So with tolerance, I think it's a little bit interesting because I think that's where some of my personal values, I think, come up. Where is it really something that I want to tolerate? Like, is it tolerating something, or is it having the discipline to understand what's going on and how that relates? You know, and that's, I guess that's my personal belief of, I prefer to think of it as a discipline thing. It comes back to discipline. I see tolerance as like an act, and discipline as that lens that you could view tolerance through.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And, well, I think there's another level to that too, like on tolerance, because that's an important issue right now, right? You know, right now. And I think the one simple, I've heard this said before, tolerance has decency as its boundaries.
Ooh.
Right. So when we talk about
I like that.
ethics and morals and, you know, and values, right? If we don't, there's some common, let's just face it, there's common decency. Right. And I think sometimes we gotta be careful. And this is, I think, critical as you're talking about ethics. Ethics are going to be important for businesses to build. And let's bring it all back to business here,
Yes.
you know, a little bit, because about growth and really on one, you know, personal development. If you don't have, like what you said, if you don't have those ethics figured out for yourself, that's one thing, but you can't have it one way and then have it another way. You know, you gotta, there's a level of decency, which we all understand would be what's right and what's wrong, you know, or how to treat one another. We may disagree with one another, but we can treat one another, you know, a certain way. And do you think that like people forget about that?
Yeah. I think, and I think it ultimately comes down to, have you taken the time to say, this is the code of ethics that I'm going to hold myself to? This is the code of behavior. Right. This is the principle that I'm going to follow because I know it's right. I know that regardless of the situation I'm faced with, I know who I am and I know what I believe in and I know how I'm going to act in the situation because of what I've defined for myself.
Right.
Yeah. It's huge. And I had that Brandon Dawson quote up to finish it out of, what you think is what you say is what you do, and what you do becomes your legacy. It starts with the mindset. It starts with the thought. And then you go out and oop, there's a little typo in there. But it starts with that thought. And then what you say rather is what you do. And then you communicate that, and then you put it to action, right? You see it to believe it, and you believe it as you see it. Right.
And that's actually one of the quotes that he says a lot of times that I really, really, really like. And that's, you know, when we look at these quotes sometimes, and I think, don't you think some people don't pause long enough, as you talked about earlier, like pick a few of them roses.
Yeah.
and they don't pause long enough to like think about it. And they look at quotes like this on the internet. They look at Facebook and Instagram. They're like, oh, that's cute. That's nice. I like that. But then they never take the time to maybe write it down.
Yeah.
You know, and really kind of like meditate upon it and like implement it as part of like take it in as part of themselves. You know what I'm saying? And it's so powerful. Tell us, okay, so now tell us, from where you've been, where you come from, where you have gotten to, tell us where John West is going.
Yeah, lots of great stuff coming up. So this consultation practice, I've been doing it privately since about 2015, just working one-on-one with individuals. And this is something that really fuels me. And I've seen the positives in people's lives where we really break it down, just like we did with ethics, morals, and values, and understanding the definition. So it's not just another quote. We're really defining these things for life. And so I'm definitely looking forward to doing more of that in 2021. Well, how does this align with this other thing, this Kayla Mizzou chip thing that I've been doing? Well, it's always been a huge value to me for healthy food, the belief that all people should have access to healthy food that's healthy for them, the land, the economy, something that's sustainable. And really being in this vehicle of Kalamazoo chips, I ended up acquiring a food manufacturing company here in Kalamazoo, and we do health food, snack food manufacturing, primarily dehydrated chips, kale chips specifically, and we distribute all throughout Michigan, and then we do orders direct to consumer. And that's a huge piece that we're going to continue to do, continue to deliver food to people's doors, continue to work with people to help them become healthier, whether it's their mind, their body, their soul, whether it's through arts and culture with the soul thing,
Right.
whether it's, your body and eating healthier, your mindset. That's really what it's about. Love it.
Love it, man. And that's like what you're doing there. You're just giving back. And that's ginormously helpful. That's huge, man. I love it.
Definitely.
Beyond, okay, so you got the consulting, you got the food manufacturing. How do you see like the food manufacturing? How do you see that complement? How does that help the consulting, or one versus the other, I guess you could say?
Yeah. So it's really interesting because the team of people that I've brought on so far in the food manufacturing business, a majority of them, we've worked out various agreements. So they have skin in the game. They have some serious skin in the game, and they're contributing to this business as if it was their own. And what I think has always been so interesting to me is really the value of belief, the umbrella of belief, what people will do for what they believe in. And there are tons of extreme examples out there. And there's a little bit, there's some softer examples right now that we could go to. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to that core value system. So really what I notice is in food manufacturing, I'm working with customers in a way that I haven't before, where it's kind of almost removed from direct contact. Mm-hmm. I'm allowing the people within the organization to kind of step into roles that I've primarily been doing in the past, not to go it alone, as Grant Cardone says.
Right.
And I've really been learning that the ability to communicate comes down to asking these questions, understanding that passion is just a process to progress. It's drive. It comes down to drive and commitment. And when you communicate these ethics, morals, and values with the team on a way of, this is where we're going, and this is why in this organization this is important, then they can start to tap into, oh yeah, this checks this box for me, and this box, and this box, and I could get used to this. And right. It's a great learning experience across the board. I've learned to become a better leader, essentially.
Fantastic. Well, it all comes together. You're building. You're not. I think one way to kind of to think about it is like you took the time to figure it out on yourself first, because you can't go into this. Any individual that's going to go be successful in business, you can be successful in business without these things, right? I mean, we've seen plenty of news stories on individuals that have done that, and they've gotten their. I mean, they're set for life, literally. I mean, because some of those people have gotten life in prison because they didn't have those morals, right? And you think of the ones it's like, hey, they're a fantastic salesman. So is Bernie Madoff. He was a fantastic sales guy, but he was obviously missing some of these critical components, this ethics, the ethics, morals, and values that would have kept his business centered, driving forward. Think of the rewards that would have come from that. There's people out there in the business world, like, I don't know. I wish I knew the man directly. Perhaps, that opportunity will come up, like Warren Buffett. Look at the massive amounts of success that he's created. And obviously those things, the simplicity and alignment of team and everything else around him has been like what's been instrumental in moving him to that point. Right. So I think it's such a good message here, where you really have to figure out these things there, because as you grow, if you're successful, it's only going to exacerbate what you've built within yourself.
Definitely.
And I think you hit on something here real quick too, like the fact that you're holding yourself accountable for the ethics, morals, and values of yourself, the way that you're injecting it into your team, not going it alone, communicating with them, and also holding them accountable, hiring and firing based on that, also sets in your mind when they go interact with the customers. It's not, you could just be taking advantage of the health market that's out there by selling kale chips, because that's a big thing now, and just go in to make all the money. But the fact that you're going into it with a healthy living mindset, when your salespeople, when everybody else talks to the customers, it's a whole different conversation for that. There's a whole different set of values that come along with that too. And I think that's really important.
Right.
Definitely. It becomes more another Brandon Dawson thing, transformative as opposed to just transactional.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's awesome.
It's really interesting too, because you talk about ethics and ethics in business as well, Joel. And I thought it was interesting. I was looking at different mentors. I was looking at Brandon and what he says with having context and contrast, right? And how that's the ability to convert negative energy into action. And then I think about his, 8 points, his, promote, profit, process. Well, it just so happens that ethics and morals are a part of that process. And then you put people behind that. That's the multiplier. Right. You have model, mimic, master, and then multiply. You can do these same things off of these principles. Model and mimic these values. Model and mimic these ethics. And then you have another interesting thing. Dan Pena. Dan Pena, he's a pretty controversial guy here. So just be warned there. But Dan Pena has a no BS, approach to life. But I've heard him say ethics swing in the wind with people. So he always says people do whatever they want as long as it's legal, just, and moral, because ethics will swing in the wind. And that's what I've also really learned about working with this team is people will have a different understanding of the ethical principles that they hold themselves to. But if you have an underlying cause, an underlying set of values, and you communicate those and you are on the same page with the definitions of what those mean to you, things become a lot easier. You are able to convert that, as Brandon says, convert that negative energy into action through that context and contrast, understanding that where I was and where I'm at now, that's the contrast. The context is the ethics and morals and values and the goals and the dreams and the targets that were implemented in order to get myself up this algorithmic process.
Love it. Love it. Love it. So what would you say if somebody's found themselves kind of at this, like, let's say they're at this decision point in life, right? And they're just starting their journey. What would you say is the first way they could get a grapple on this direction?
Yeah, a lot of it comes down to acceptance. The quicker, it's hard because I've been studying so much with Brandon and Grant. I notice these things that keep coming out, and it's from them. But the quicker you come to acceptance, the easier things are going to be. So you got to really accept where you're at. For me, there are all these places I wanted to be, but at the end of the day, this is where I'm at. And this is what it's going to take to get there. It's going to take a set of steps to get to that next point. So it really comes down to accepting, acknowledging, and then I still go back to take inventory, figure out what brings you closer to where you want to go and what brings you farther away. And this is hard, Grant Cardone says it, you got to give something up. What are you willing to give up? You got to give something up to get to the next step. Take inventory, figure out what's bringing you closer, what's bringing you farther away, cut all the stuff that's bringing you farther away, and bring in more of the stuff that's getting you closer, whatever that goal may be.
Right. And I think a lot of people don't do that. They don't take the inventory. They don't see where they're at. They're not willing to give something up. They don't realize that they got to live like no one else. One of my gals here at the office always says, she quotes, I think it's I forget who it's a quote from, but it's like, live like no one else today so you can live like no one else tomorrow.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Right. And so that does mean you sometimes got to pay that price. You got to give up. You're going to work harder than ever, to push forward and grind. And it's just, you're not going to slow down one iota.
Definitely.
So for accepting kind of the reality of where some businesses currently are, I mean, some of them aren't growing. I know certainly we have, and there's some that are facing their doors getting closed. But would you say that, to me, that sounds like the acceptance and a lot of those other alignment issues that they're having, and maybe even getting their core values in line and going through the same process that you'd say is a person who's beginning is probably also the same set of advice that you probably give somebody who's declining and they need to find a way to move up. It sounds to me like these are two kind of fundamentally somewhat of the same thing, even though they might present themselves slightly different.
Exactly. And that's a huge connection to make. That's a huge connection to make. Because I don't think a lot of people see it that way. Well, there's this stuff going on over here, and there's this stuff going on over here and over here. Well, I don't know what to do with any of it. Forget it. Like, no, the connections are there, right? It doesn't matter if it's business or relationships or communication or whatever it may be. The connections are there. Yeah, definitely. And what I also find interesting is in doing this consultation practice, here I don't like saying my age because I think it's but a number, but I'm 24 and I've done this consultation practice with people who are 2 to 3 times my age. And it always provides a different set of results. I know someone who they're 25, 26, we can go through this and we'll spend all day, multiple days on just ethics, morals, and values, getting clear on it, defining it. Now, someone who's in their 50s or 60s, they're gonna probably be more towards the goals and the dreams and the life actualization piece of things. So for different life stages, yeah, all this definitely fits in different ways. Yeah. The other thing too that I definitely wanted to touch on is with the importance of mentors and coaches is also that importance of proximity, because really without that proximity, you don't have that context and contrast. And you can really start to see how, yeah, there are some people who are, have X amount of more experience than I do, a multiplier, but I'm sitting here going through the same stuff as them in different ways. So it's that important thing to learn that, you can learn a lot from the different people you're around if you choose the right people.
Yeah, sure.
Right. So in 2021, well, let me ask you this question, because this is something we're going to talk about next week, actually, with a number of folks, is a pivot point. In 2021, was there this moment, or I'm sorry, 2020, not 2021. We're getting to 2021. Was there this moment in 2020 where you're like, what I thought was an asset was actually one of my biggest liabilities?
Yeah. Leadership for me was a huge one, because here driving around feeling all good about the stuff I'm doing, and I realized, I've been doing it alone for quite some time. Like, I'm not a business owner. I'm just running stuff. Like, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not a business owner. And so that was a huge one. And then understanding that our chip sales actually went up at the start of COVID. So things were starting off pretty good. And then we recognized we had a couple major issues, because keep in mind, when I acquired this business, it was a failing business. The numbers had been consistently negative for the previous years. So we knew we were going back into that if we didn't make a change. And it took acceptance of this situation. I was listening to all this noise. Well, it's COVID. You can't redo your plans. And it's COVID. It's like, okay, hold up. What do I believe in? Where am I going? Where do I want to go? Let me bring more of that in, and let me get clear about what I can do. Control the controllable. So that's when we decided to do a delivery system. We implemented it from the ground up in a couple of weeks, not DoorDash, not Shipt, not Grubhub, a custom app delivery system for a set of organizations within this community. And we pushed that along with our chip sales. So now we have a whole new customer base, because we're partnering with these organizations to tap into their customer base in order to promote our product, promote this service of delivering them food, and then also saying, hey, by the way, if you want any of this, we have this over here. So I think that was a huge pivot point for us over 2020, where we had to make a change and realize we had to be more present, be more omnipresent, and show up at people's doors if that's what it was going to take.
Right. So the different individuals that we've spoken with, like the first individual we spoke with on BEGrowthDriven was like one of those ones that's kind of like a similar story. He's like, when all this started off, I just kept advertising. Right. He did something, and that's, a lot of people would be like, well, no brainer, duh. But a lot of people, what they're doing or what they were doing and they're still doing is they retreat back. They don't want to advertise. They're like, I got to conserve. They're trying to manage all of that. Right. And that's, that's been the game changer, for example, for him. So that's where one of the questions I want to try to, learn from everybody is like that. What was that moment? What was the one thing, And so, man, that's fantastic, because I would imagine that's going to carry off into 2021 for you in a way that you didn't expect.
Definitely.
Right.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to moving forward. And what I realized too, something that I knew that I had to do is when COVID hit, even when I just started hearing word of it, I said, yep, I'm going to have to do whatever it takes to surround myself with people who have been through something like this before. Went all in with Grant Cardone, went all in with Brandon Dawson, continued to study, because I knew that Grant had gone through it before and come out on the other end more successful than when he started.
Right.
So yeah, making that commitment to be omnipresent, making that commitment to stay true to what you believe in despite what's going on, keep advertising, keep doing what you need to do to progress yourself towards that worthy goal, and don't look back.
I always look at it as like, sometimes when you have that pressure too, you very quickly can maybe remove like one of the layers that what got you there, right? So and this was in relation to like marketing, but I think it applies in a lot of things. It's like, repeat what works. They stress at the workshop is you need to repeat what works. If it worked really well, repeat it. So, and this stitches all the way back to the values that you talked about, like what really you dug down into. What was John West? The ethics, morals, and values. People sometimes will set those aside later as if they've outgrown them. And that's, I think that's important. It's fantastic. It is fantastic to hear your story, how you've really kind of like where you've been, where you've come to, what got you there in between. And I can only imagine that you're going to have just a phenomenal direction forward in 2021 from a business standpoint. And so I'm looking forward to seeing that and keeping in the loop with you too on all of that.
Definitely. Yeah. The one thing that I'd leave you with is, the major difference in my life was really taking the time to define what these things mean, making sure I'm communicating that with others. And it's one thing to go through this process by yourself. It's a complete other thing to loop in other people, your loved ones, your family, your coworkers, other business owners, other entrepreneurs, people who are going after what they want out of life. And I think the last thing too, there's this guy named Brendan Burchard, who is a motivational high performance guy. And he studied Bill Wilmot for a while, who is a leading expert on mediation. And a lot of people think that it comes down to content of why communication fails or mediation fails. It comes down to content. But what Bill Wilmot says is there's three levels. There's relationship, identity, and process. Back to process. With relationship, it's us together. So am I being respected here in this communication? Is this relationship, or it's a respect thing? It goes back to the value of respect. Then there's identity. Who am I in the world? And the synergy of interdependence and independence, right? And then the process piece of it is, how do we work together and talk together and figure things out? Are our definitions the same for what we're communicating? Do we have a clear set of ideals of what we're going after? So I think, again, with ethics, morals, and values can not just be in relationships or communication. It's not just in life personally, but this my dad sent me a text when I told him I was doing this, and he said, just be sure to say, no matter how dark the night is, there's always a bright star. I was like, thanks, Edgar Allan Poe. No, but in reality, I think it's very true. And I think that's something I've learned from him from a young age is, integrity and stay true to what you believe in, because no matter how hard things get, there's always a bright star. There's always, it doesn't matter how cloudy the sky is here, because I know in the next city over, it's probably not that cloudy. So what can I choose to focus on?
Yeah. You know what it is it may be cloudy, but think about it. When you've gone on your last commercial flight, if it was at night, right? It was cloudy night, right? It took just a few seconds and you were above the clouds.
Yeah.
Right. And the sky was clear. right? So realize that sometimes the clouds you see are only at the ground level. You just need to elevate, and you just need to go higher.
Yeah.
Man, and it's a beautiful scene up there, right? That we have a beautiful creator that's created those things, and the same way too, we can move through things. So such an important thing there.
Definitely. Definitely. And it all comes down to having the stable data, that stable data of what you believe in, and
there you go.
Where you're going.
All right, John. Hey, we appreciate you jumping on today. Definitely 100% love it. For those of you that are jumping on right now, make sure that you like, follow, and share Be Growth Driven. We have a lineup next week, and we're excited about this. If you look at some of our guest speakers that we've lined up, this is going to be one huge, massive roundtable, by the way. Okay, we're going to talk about the pivot point and kind of what we touched on with John West here this morning. What was like the one thing, the asset that you realized was your liability, and how that has changed your company from surviving to thriving, and it's going to drive things forward in 2021. So we got Ken Josling, we got Jeff Sorrow, we got Russ Yeager, Jason Alt, Rob Sissel, Aaron Johnson, Dave Robars, and I'm sure more will drop in, especially on Dave Robar's side. So we are really excited about it. I think we're maxing out our StreamYard at that point right there with those people. So I wish I could have a ton more people, jumping on that. Maybe we can do some round robin and get people jumping in. We'll see. John, again, thank you so much for jumping on. We appreciate you very much.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate being here. And, you don't have to keep learning from me, but for the love of God, please learn from someone. Keep studying. Please keep progressing towards your goals.
Right.
Give me a follow on Instagram too, @JohnWestCo.
Awesome. All right. We're going to get that put in the comments. That way people can put the link. Jesse, if you don't mind, can you put the link to his Instagram right in the comments? We got our gal Jesse watching, and that way people can know how to connect with you. And by all means, reach out to John. Follow his journey. You'll catch him, I think, playing some music from time to time, and all kinds of wacky and wild stuff off to the kale farms and everything else in between.
Definitely.
So, love it. All right, guys, be sure to tune in.